Namaskar. Pleased to welcome you all on this occasion. On the 75th anniversary of India's freedom, on this moment of Azadi ka Amrit Mahotsav, Chanakya University is pleased to present stories of inspiration and success that represents the idea of India. We are commencing a journey of interacting with icons of modern India who are inspired with the heritage of India, is representing India across the globe. We commence this journey with an interaction with the world-renowned Ricky Kej. The man needs no introduction, but I am pleased to present a brief profile of the man and his journey. Mr. Ricky Kej, born on August 5th, 1981, is a musician, an activist, a professor, a goodwill ambassador, a dentist by qualification, a youth icon, and a global hero. All of us know him, his achievements as a Grammy award-winning musician, but he is a United Nations ambassador, of land ambassador, and also is a celebrity supporter of UNICEF. He has won numerous Grammy awards and collaborated with musicians across the world in his musical journey, supporting specific causes. His winds of samsara, love of language, the Shanti Samsara all indicate his deep love and roots in Indian heritage of culture and music. He is being celebrated across the world. Also, he is present in over 3,500 placements of radio and television jingles. He is a goodwill ambassador for Save the Children, new global campaign, Every Lost Child. Ricky Kej has been named as the Real Leaders 100 list across the world for his outstanding musical and humanitarian achievement. Interestingly, he has, to familiarize children with the Sustainable Development Goals, has created My Earth songs, 27 children's rhymes based on 17 SDGs, and these songs have been launched by UNICEF and are published in over 5 million textbooks. Also to say that ICSE syllabus has a story of Ricky Kej to be taught to children of 7th standard. He is also a professor at the National Institute of Advanced Studies. He is originally born in the USA but brought up in Bangalore, a hardcore Bangalorean, finished his schooling in Bishop Cotton School and completed his dentistry in Oxford Dental College. He drives this sense of pride and also his accomplishments from a natural gift of music, and has never looked at, and is very interestingly, having been qualified as a dentist, he says it is not necessary to pursue multiple careers. You stick on to a career, every career has its ups and downs, you seek your triumph in the career that is chosen. And he is extremely proud of the essence of his works remaining in the Indian roots and based largely on Hindustani and Carnatic music. His Shanti Samsara, World Music for Environmental Consciousness, was launched in 2015 at United Nations when Prime Minister Narendra Modi was in attendance. Mr. Ricky Kej also cites, very interestingly, references to Bollywood music and its influence in a positive negative way on the global musical arena. He is known for his environmental concern and his sustained activism, and all his works reflect the same. In fact, he says the word samsara represents the world around us, the world within us, and the world in us. It's been a great journey of 40 years across the world, representing various causes including children's rights, Save the Girl Child, and also freeing the bonded labor. I can go on with his representations of music forever, but I wish let the man speak. It's been a pleasure to have you, sir, here to commence this pioneering journey of Chanakya University in our interaction with people who are redefining the Indian story. If I may start this question, how do you define Ricky Kej in one sentence? Who is Ricky Kej?
First of all, thank you for having me. Chanakya University is almost like home to me now, and I feel like I'm part of the family, so I'm very grateful for that, and thank you for that very thorough introduction. But so who am I? If I have to put myself in one word, then it's basically a musician, because that's what every part of my being is. And along with being a musician, I've always been an environmentalist my whole life. These two pillars have dictated my life and pretty much every single decision in my life. And I've always considered music and environment as one and the same. It's very difficult for me to explain why I feel this way. But I guess because at the end of the day, how did music start? Music started off as sounds from within nature, sounds of the birds, sounds of the animals, sounds of the trees, sounds of the wind, sounds of the raindrops. And then later on, it's us humans who started making these sounds pleasing for human ears. So we started imitating these sounds. And then it's only for the last few hundred years that actually music has become academic with notes and scales. But if you think about it, music is nature, and that's why for me, both of them are the same entity.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
So it cites here that you actually made a concluding statement at the United Nations stating that the threat of sustainability or non-sustainability is real and it's here. So could you please make it we understand the debate about sustainability and environmental the protection, but how real is a threat and how immediate is a concern, because you've been a global citizen and you've traveled across the world, including places like Kiribati.
Yeah.
So in that sense, how real is the threat of environmental endangerment?
No, of course, the threat is absolutely real, because the thing is that we as human beings have stopped living in coexistence with our environment. Because if you think about it, India, at the root of our traditions, the root of our spirituality, and at the root of who we are itself is Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, that the world is one family. And nowadays, when we think about the world is one family, when we think about coexistence, the only thing that comes to our mind is living in peace between Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, Christians, Jews, Buddhists, basically different parts of the human species. When the actual true meaning of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam or coexistence in any ancient culture, anywhere in the world, has always meant living in absolute peace and absolute harmony with every single entity on this planet, whether living or non-living. So it's not just living in peace and harmony between all of us humans, which we are also not doing a very good job of, but also with all life, that is the forest and wildlife. And we have to widen the circle, and we have to also live in peace with the elements of nature, which is very, very strong within our traditions, that we have to coexist with the water we drink, with the air we breathe, with the land we walk on. And it's only if we have this thorough and absolute 360-degree view of coexistence that we will be able to survive. And we are not doing a very good job of it. Because for the last few 2,000-3,000 years, what's happening is that we are living in what they call as dominion over the environment, where we think we can take and we do not need to give back. We do not need to coexist. And of course, now consciousness is changing, because we've realized that, we are realizing that, if you pollute the air, then, it's not going to just go somewhere, Or if you throw a plastic bag on the street, it's not going to go somewhere,
Right.
Everything is finite, and we've got a very thin atmosphere. And, so at the end of the day, whatever pain and suffering that we're going to inflict on nature is pain and suffering that will eventually be inflicted on ourselves. And maybe not on ourselves immediately, but maybe it could be a future generation, or it could be on a population on the other side of the planet. Like the example that I give of Kiribati all the time. Kiribati is this country in the South Pacific, 21 inhabited islands, and they are predicted to be the first country in the world that's going to go completely underwater due to climate change. So I visited the country, spent a lot of time with their president, spent a lot of time with their people. And I realized that this is a country that lives within nature. They do not take more than they can give back. But yet during our lifetime, they're going to be completely submerged underwater due to rising sea levels because of global warming. So basically, people who are the worst affected due to climate change are the ones who are least at fault. And that is basically what Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam is all about. We sitting over here, the things that we do sitting over here are having disastrous consequences on people on the other side of the world. And that's why we need to start thinking as a species. We need to start thinking as all life on this planet. And that is why I believe that the threat of climate change is real. It's extremely real. There are current victims of climate change. And climate change is definitely human induced. And we need to start thinking more responsibly in order to solve this problem.
That's really very heartening to note. We are very saddened by the debate of environmental protection as a debate between the developed and the developing countries.
Absolutely.
Who's more responsible for
Correct.
that. So your point also brings me to the hypothesis called the spaceship Earth hypothesis. There's no outside.
Correct.
Everything is within.
It's within.
So we see a very strong sense of connectedness to Indianness in you, in whatever you do, in your music, in your activism, and things like that. all of us would like to know, how is India being perceived around the world? I mean, is there a perceptible change of the way the world is looking at India? How is India emerging across the world? Your views on that?
See, again, as you mentioned, I travel quite extensively, and I can put it in two large buckets. One is basically about the economics, and the second thing could be about the arts. When it comes to the arts, India has been respected for a very long time, of course now more so. And when it comes to economics also, people are seeing India as being an emerging, whatever you would call a superpower in the world. And I guess that for the last few years, India has been far more respected than India ever was. I see that a lot of my friends who used to always be shy to call themselves Indian now proudly call themselves Indian. So that's been happening quite strongly. When it comes to the arts itself, what I can tell you is this, that the perception in India has always been that in order to be a musician and to have your music appreciated all over the world, you have to make Western music. So you see a lot of people saying that I want to make it big in America, I want to make it big in Europe, so I'm going to make English music, or I'm going to do pop music, or I'm going to do hip hop music because I'm going to do music, I want to become big in America, or I want to get onto the Billboard charts, or I want to win a Grammy award, so I'm going to do this kind of music. But if you look at the people who have actually won Grammy awards in India, Pandit Ravi Shankar, Pandit Vishwamohan Bhatt, me, we won Grammy awards for our Indian music. So basically recognition, and of course if you look at Pandit Ravi Shankar, he's the most famous Indian musician outside of India. There's nobody who's more famous than him outside of India. If you look at Bollywood, now Bollywood, what is the kind of music that Bollywood makes? It's very high quality music, there's no doubt about it. But at the same time, it's Western pop music with Indian language as lyrics. So like for example, if it's a Tamil movie industry, it's basically pop music, but with Tamil lyrics. If it is a Hindi film song, it is basically Western pop music with a little bit of Indian music sprinkled in, but with Hindi lyrics. So it's basically pop music. Now when an Indian Bollywood singer or an Indian composer performs in, let's say, New Jersey or San Jose or let's say Moscow or some place like that, they get a full stadium audience. But who's in the audience? It is only Indian diaspora that is in the audience. So they have not broken cultural barriers. But the actual artists who have broken cultural barriers are people like Pandit Ravi Shankar, people like Vishwamohan Bhatt, people like Zakir Hussain, people like Ustad Ali Akbar Khan, Anushka Shankar. These are the people who have actually broken cultural barriers, because when you go to their concert abroad, then what happens is that the demographic of the audience within the concert hall is representative of the demographic of the city itself. Like if the city has got a 5% Asian population, there'll be a 5% Asian population inside. If it's a 70% Caucasian population, there'll be a 70% Caucasian population inside. So they have actually broken cultural barriers. So I believe that if you want to make it big in the West, and if that is your desire, that that you want your music to reach a global audience, then you should not be looking at making Western music. You should be digging deeper into your roots, and you should figure out what is it that makes you Indian, what is it that makes you unique to the rest of the world, being an Indian, and make that kind of music, and you will get recognition all over the world.
So thank you on that. You mentioned the word pop music. I understand popular music. Can it be understood, or does it imply that perhaps this kind of fusion, or whatever the Bollywood music we term it as, do you believe that it has actually depreciated a sense of aesthetics in music, the taste of a common man in music?
I would say that Bollywood music is not created as an art form, it's created as a commercial form. So there has to be a distinct differentiation of that. So when somebody makes a Bollywood film or let's say an item song, they're not trying to create a piece of art. So you cannot let an item song define what the art of a country is. And I don't even think I don't think Bollywood is that delusional to think that a song like Sheila Ki Jawani is defining art in India, or a song like Kajrare is defining art in India. So it should not be representative, and nobody should be delusional enough to believe that is representative of an art form within a country. That is just a commercial form to make money and for commerce, that's all.
So in this context, India is driven by what we call as a democracy and digitization. We are a young nation.
Correct.
We also face a huge challenge in communicating to them because they seem to live virtually, partially. In this context, you are a youth icon, you have a large following across the world. As a university, as individuals, as people in the social life, how do we actually establish, connect with the young? I mean, what is it they seek to achieve? With a large amount of freedom, how do they find purpose? I mean, how do we connect to them?
So I believe that since I'm an environmentalist and a musician, I can speak from that perspective. Communication is always key when it comes to solving problems. Basically, like I mentioned, there are so many problems on our planet. That I spoke about climate change. There is species extinction, loss of biodiversity. There is degradation of ecosystems, plastics pollution, air pollution, and so many social issues like, as the Sustainable Development Goals speak about, there is poverty, there's hunger, there is sanitation, gender inequality. So all these issues are happening. And I believe that the biggest threat to our planet is the constant thought that everybody has that somebody else will make a difference. And that is what is being communicated right now, unfortunately, that the youth always feels that, that activism is the most important thing, because we are always waiting for somebody else to make a difference. So we have to force other people to make a difference. We have to force governments to make a difference. We have to force intergovernmental bodies, corporations. But so everybody is trying, the youth is always trying to change the world, but they're never trying to change themselves.
You're right.
And that is where there is a huge communication problem. And I believe that universities can change this and can change the paradigm of this, because it needs a deeply rooted, holistic approach through the education system, where we need to empower everybody to believe that the small incremental changes, the tiny incremental changes that they make within their own lives can actually make a difference. Like, the thought of the youth is that, that if I stop using single-use plastics, what difference will it make? Or if I use public transportation, what difference will it make? Or if I buy lesser clothes or I consume less, what difference will it make? So that needs to change, because it will make a huge difference, and everybody needs to be completely empowered that these things make a difference. And that is where communication will play a very important role. Innovative communication will play a very important role. Education will play a very important role, and arts will play a very important role, because if we speak to people emotionally through the language of performing arts, especially, then that will go into the hearts and souls of people, and that will sort of inspire them to bring about change. So that is why education and performing arts, I believe, will play a very, very crucial role in communicating these problems and to bring about change.
That's very pleasing, sir, actually, because we are really concerned about the kind of campaign that the media runs. I mean, we expect the world is coming to an end. I mean, the kind of media hype on negativity.
Doom and gloom, yeah.
So, I mean, happy to hear that the world is definitely changing for the better and the youth are responding to.
No, sure, because the thing is that there are always two ways to communicate. There is the doom and gloom approach, and the other is inspiring into action approach.
You're right.
So the doom and gloom approach has been used a lot by people like Greta Thunberg, for example. So Greta Thunberg, the Swedish child activist, I've met her, I've seen her in action. I think she's quite genuine in what she does. But at the same time, she uses the doom and gloom approach, which could be effective. But again, this is strictly my opinion, and it may be controversial. But in my opinion, the doom and gloom approach has got a very immediate effect, but it does not have a long-term effect. So, I do not use that in my life, because I believe that inspiring people into action through love and through positivity is far more powerful. So, if you look at the British naturalist, that is Sir David Attenborough, he has got the approach of doing things through love, that showcase the beauty of the natural world, and hopefully through that beauty, people will find it within themselves to conserve and to sustain this beautiful planet. So that is, and to sustain this natural world. So that is why my communication has always been through love and through positive reinforcement, because positivity is the best way to have a long-term result.
If I may just come from the global issue to something personal, what actually inspires you, sir? I mean, it's been quite an eventful journey. So what actually drives you?
The thing is that positivity always drives me. The music drives me. I'm basically, every part of my being is basically a musician. So the thrill of doing music in front of an audience, to see my music having impact, and to see my music having measurable impact in changing mindsets. Because right now, for the last few years, the only kind of music that I create is about the environment, and it's about social impact around those areas. Now, the thing is that why I say social impact around those areas is because the environment cannot be looked at in isolation, especially in a country which is as complex as India. Now in India, the narratives that the West has, of consume less of everything, that cannot work in India, because in India, if you go to a rural area which has got some amount of poverty, and you tell people consume less of everything, they're going to be like, our lives itself are sustainable the way they are,
Right.
We are not over consuming, we are not doing anything wrong to the environment, we are in fact the most environmentally conscious society. So the messaging cannot be the same, to these people. And then everybody's got dreams and aspirations. So it's not like in India, everybody has got the same facilities or the same standard of living that people in Sweden have, or people in Norway have, or whatever. So the thing is that India is quite a complex country where a lot of other issues need to be solved before you get into solving problems on the environment. Like for example, again, if you have to put these issues into two buckets, it would be thriving issues and survival issues.
Right.
So only once you figure out these survival issues, then you can move to thriving issues, and environment is always looked upon as more of a thriving issue.
You're right.
Yeah.
So in that context, you have pursued music
Yeah.
successfully. We come across a lot of youngsters who may have that streak of music talent in them, but scared to pursue a passion.
Correct.
How would you advise? What would you advise? What should be the roadmap for a place like us? I mean, for people like us who are facilitators, or youngsters who have this desire to pursue a passion, but are compelled due to reasons to seek what the world wants. So what's your advice?
First of all, I would say a formal education in music and in the performing arts is extremely important. There is no two ways about it. You have to have it. Because as we were discussing earlier, that art, all arts have been made, art is all about breaking rules and expanding the horizons of the art form and making it more and more vital. But you have to know the rules in order to break them. So it's very important to have a strong foundation, and education is extremely important. Second thing is that having a good facility is very important. Okay. Because my parents forced me to do a degree of dentistry because they were not confident that music could ever be a profession. So they always felt that I'm going to, music is a hobby, how can it be a profession? But if they were to see a university which has got like a beautiful building, it's got a beautiful campus, there are professors, there are teachers, it's a proper infrastructure when it comes to the performing arts, and they were to see all of those facilities, they would have probably changed their mind, and they would have felt that, okay, music is a valid profession. So that way, a facility is really important and formal education is really important. Now for students itself, a lot of parents sometimes come to me, friends of mine who have got children, and kids also come to me. Kids tell me that, oh, but should I become a musician? I do not know. I will not be able to convince my parents. Or parents saying that, how do I know if my child is, talented enough? So I tell children, this is a very rude thing that I tell them, that, that being a musician, you cannot be just a musician. You have to be a musician, you have to be an entrepreneur, and you have to be a leader. Now, leadership is very important because entrepreneurship, everybody knows that, you need to, because being a musician, you need to, or a performing artist, you need to constantly sell a product, and that product is you. So you need to be a full-on entrepreneur to actually become an artist. But leadership becomes really important in the case of your parents, because if you cannot convince your parents that you're going to be a successful musician and you're good at what you do, you cannot convince millions of people all over the world to listen to you. So if you are unable to convince your parents, who are people who know you really well, then probably it's not a profession for you. Because you need to be able to convince your parents.
True.
And so that's what. So you need to have that leadership quality where you are able to convince your parents, and if you can pass that hurdle of convincing your parents, then probably you can go to the next big hurdle of convincing millions of people to actually buy your music and come to your concerts.
Brilliant. So they should develop the deep conviction about their own competence.
And they should know how to communicate that conviction.
Conviction too.
Yeah.
So we are on a journey. We are commencing on a journey of setting up a university. I mean, a lot of aspirational journey it used to be. If I were to ask you, sir, what would be the maybe 2-3 essential things a university should be looking for or delivering, or what should be a university, a place of universal learning should possess according to you? How should we foster, nurture the future?
I think whatever I've read and what I've been told about Chanakya University is absolutely amazing, because again, it's a holistic approach towards using sustainability as in the core philosophy itself of the university, by having solar energy, renewable energy, by having organic farming, no fertilizer farming, and teaching people, students are going to be grounded within Indian culture and traditions in every single school of thought, making social sciences and humanities as a really important curriculum. So I think this is a university that will be a force to reckon with, and will ensure that India remains India. That's extremely important.
It's extremely pleasing to hear from you, because we do face a certain challenge. Now we are looking at comparison between the Western values, and sometimes the Indian values considered as still little conventional and traditional. So coming from a person like you, I think our focus on Indian heritage of learning with a global outlook, I think.
And India has been always about sustainability. That's in our roots. So I guess that sustainability needs to be at the core of everything that we do. Because right now, what's happening is that because of westernization, the paradigm what dictates what we can buy, what we can consume, and what we can waste on a daily basis, whether it's food or clothes or whatever, is determined by what we can financially afford. If you can afford like 10 shirts, let's buy 10 shirts. If you can afford to keep the tap water running, let's keep it running. If we can afford 10 dishes in a restaurant and eat little bit of each, let's just buy it. So that paradigm needs to change to what the planet can afford, and that is what our Vedas talk about. That that use only what the planet can afford. So when we buy something, we should constantly think about that. Can the planet afford me buying this? Like for example, if you buy a pair of jeans, it's made out of cotton. How is cotton brought? People do not think about cause and reaction. The cause and effect rather. So what happens is that like a single pair of jeans, it has to be like about half an acre of land of cotton has to be cultivated to actually, to actually make that single pair of jeans. You're watering that plantation for a couple of months before you can harvest it. And then after that, you're transporting that cotton sometimes on a plane, sometimes, so imagine the carbon footprint and the water footprint. Right. Then you have to process the cotton, you have to weave the jeans, then you have to make it, then you have to dye it. So basically the water footprint of a single pair of jeans is 9,000 liters of water. So 9,000 liters of water goes into the jeans. But yet the communication from the West comes in that when you're brushing your teeth, turn off the faucet. So, but if you don't buy one additional pair of jeans, you're automatically saving 9,000 liters of water. So that is what it is. And we've always been taught that, buy stuff and use it for a longer period of time, rather than going on Instagram and having a different costume every single day,
You're right.
Or for every single picture. So that is why universities like this become really important, because we're teaching us the older ways of doing things, getting people to be more wiser, understanding our culture, and understanding that the planet cannot afford what we're doing right now.
So we're very happy with this observation, because one of the skills that we have developed is called ecology skills, to give them the life cycle perspective.
Correct.
Where do things originate and how they end up. Brilliant. But now I think considering the time, I want a question. This is a selfish question. Can we cultivate Ricky Kej's in this university? I mean, what my question to you is, your achievements borders on the genius. So, how much of it is actually natural and how much of it is actually deliberately cultivated? My question. Now, we really want to make global leaders. That's what we are looking at claiming. So, just a perspective from you.
Now, if I have to talk about how much of it is cultivated and all of that stuff, of course, music, I started off as being self-taught, then later on I took a formal education in music, and I'm very grateful to my teachers for that. And but when it comes to my other life skills, like understanding ecology and all of that stuff, that has been self-cultivated just out of sheer interest and sheer thirst for knowledge. I grew up with a huge learning disorder, and I had to overcome even that, and I've got this thing known as expressive language disorder, where I cannot learn languages. And that's why the only language that I know is English, and I can understand other languages, but I cannot express myself in these languages. So I had to overcome all of this by sheer hard work and determination, and I believe that a lot of people can do that, and we need to help people. We need to recognize, because a lot of times when my spelling was really bad in school, and and I could not form sentences and all of that stuff, people would be like, you have to learn harder, because people never recognized that, that the wiring in my brain was a little different. And I think that's what we need to cultivate, and that's what we need to understand, that every individual is an individual person, and everybody has got their own strengths and weaknesses.
Oh, that's amazing. This is something of an insight to overcome a challenge and to achieve this. It's amazing. How do you view the future of Indian folk arts? Can some of the almost extinct art forms be revived?
Of course. Now the thing is that a lot of people, and even I was guilty of doing that during this conversation, that equate traditional Indian arts to only classical music, which is not true at all. Classical music is one form, whether it's the North Indian or the South Indian classical music. But what I would go on to saying, which is equally or even more important, is the traditional music, like the tribal forms of music, the folk forms of music. So I've been working quite hard on that. I finished doing a documentary on the Baul tradition in Bengal, where I did a documentary where we documented 40 Baul artists who are not using Baul music as a genre of music like what it is used nowadays, but who are leading the Baul traditions itself, of being nomadic people, of moving from village to village, not having homes, not having cash, and leading the sannyas life, and and their pathway to God is through music. Okay. So it's been quite heartwarming for me to actually do this, to understand their traditions, to understand what their music is all about. Similarly, I collaborated with tribal musicians from Araku Valley on the border of Andhra Pradesh and Orissa, made some songs with them, understood what they're singing about. These are songs that have been passed down for thousands of years, and they've been passed down orally, and it's never been documented. So since all these songs, whether it's the Baul traditions or whether it's the tribal traditions or folk traditions, a lot of them have never been documented. They've been just passed down orally. And I'm speaking purely about music right now. So I think it's really important to document them and to learn from them, because a lot of these songs have got a lot of knowledge that all of us in the present generation can benefit very, very highly from.
And there are attempts at this being made currently.
Are
they individual attempts or organizational, institutional attempts being made?
No, there are not. But I'm hoping that it becomes organizational, and I'm hoping that these art forms are actually taught in universities.
Great.
So that, like for example, the Chanakya University, I'm hoping that this is what happens, where rather than just teaching the regular curriculums of Western classical and Indian classical, like students are taught these very seemingly obscure instruments, which are part of our tradition and which are probably on the verge of extinction.
That's nice. So next one, which Indian composer had the most profound effect on your life? That's a question.
So I would say one of the most profound effect has been Pandit Ravi Shankar, simply because he single-handedly made Indian music popular all over the world and brought sitar into the mainstream, made people understand it. He broke cultural barriers all over the world, collaborated with musicians everywhere while he was still playing pure Indian classical. So he was not playing the sitar like in a westernized style, or he was not trying to play it like an electric guitar or whatever. He was playing pure Indian classical music, but yet collaborating with musicians. And if you notice, a lot of times when the Westerners do fusion music, it's usually Western pop music with a little sprinkling of like a sitar here or a little bit of tabla here. Whereas whenever they would collaborate with Pandit Ravi Shankar, it would be a proper 50-50% collaboration, where there is equal respect given to the Western form of music and to the Indian style of music, because of the kind of profound effect he had on these musicians. So he would be a person who would be somebody who I've always looked up to, and I think he has taken Indian music leaps forward. Yeah.
Great. So the next question would be, how do you propose sustainable living to be a part of curriculum at higher education? Any specific measures so that we can make it a part of life practices?
What I do in my own life, in my own individual life, so there are a few things that I do. One is that I have only 11 sets of clothes at any given point of time. So if you look at my Instagram, almost all the pictures have got the same clothes. This pant and this jacket, you'll see it in at least 7 or 8 different pictures. So that's how it is, because I buy decent quality clothes and I take care of them. And only when one tears beyond repair, that's when it is disposed and a new set of clothes come in. So 11 sets of clothes at any given point of time. Second thing is that I don't own a car. I used to have 3 cars till a few years back, till about 2013. And that is when I started traveling a lot, and I realized that whenever I'm in a foreign country, I'm using public transportation over there. So why am I ashamed to use public transportation in my own city? Because in India, there's a stigma when it comes to public transportation that if I have a car, I cannot move backwards. And I believe that paradigm needs to change. And if more and more people move towards public transportation, then I think our public transportation systems will automatically improve. So that is why I use the metros, I use buses. If I need to, then I use taxis if I need to get to a place on time, but I don't own a car. And the third thing is that I eat a meat-free diet. And so basically, because meat is one of the most polluting industries on this planet, one of the 3 most polluting industries on this planet. So I turned meat-free about 8 years ago, and never looked back from there. So that is how I reduced my carbon footprint. But most importantly, I've engaged a company to audit my carbon footprint every quarter. So every quarter there is this company called Smarter Dharma. They audit my carbon footprint every quarter, just like how you would audit your finances, right up to my ink usage, my what I would purchase, my concerts, my air travel, my ground transportation, every single my lighting usage at concerts, and everything is audited. And then at the end of a quarter, we figure out how we can reduce our carbon footprint for the next quarter, and I mitigate my carbon footprint through tree plantations and investment in renewable energy. So on paper, I'm leading a carbon negative lifestyle, because just like that, the way the systems are around us, unfortunately, it's impossible for us to lead a carbon neutral lifestyle. The way that the world has, the turn that the world has taken right now, it's not possible. So the only thing that can keep our conscience clear is basically mitigating the carbon footprint and the impact that you're having on the planet by tree plantations and by investment in renewable energies.
That's really amazing. I mean, sustainable development actually starts with sustainable living and life. How do you see India by 2040? What's your vision about our country?
So I guess that India needs to be self-reliant. That's one of the most important things, so that we do not self-reliant for many reasons. Of course, the geopolitical reasons of that we should not, no other country should interfere in our in our affairs, and also the fact that because I'm always partial to the arts, I'm always partial towards soft power, but to become like a soft power powerhouse on this planet, where everybody looks towards our knowledge, everybody looks towards our our art forms as being really pure, of being everything that comes from the heart, and I mean, that's about it. Like India being the most respected and the most valued country on the planet.
It's very nice to hear, sir. If Chanakya University were to start a dedicated school for performing arts, what would be your vision for it? What would be an ideal school like?
I think we've discussed that during the course of this entire conversation. So I would say meaningful art is very important. Meaningful art that digs deep within our roots and also has a global perspective. So there has to be a lens of a global perspective, so that our art form can reach all over the world. But at the same time, it needs to be very deeply rooted within Indian traditions and culture. Even the thematic elements of what we perform has to be deeply rooted within Indian culture. And it's very important that music has a purpose. I believe that, or any art form, whether it's dance or whether it's filmmaking or whether it is theatre, everything needs to have a very strong purpose of communicating a very strong message. Because the problem in India is that because of the deep fix that Bollywood has over the music industry in India, every single song that comes out of India is either a love song or an item song. And there are so many things to celebrate in India. There are so many beautiful verses in our ancient texts that we can put to music and which can go mainstream, rather than just being niche music that people listen to at home or whatever. There are so many issues also that we can talk about, through our music. So why not encourage musicians to, to talk about all of this? Why not encourage theatre artists to talk about all this? There is so much wealth of stories within India. So why do we have to look at anything else but, all of this? So I think that is what my vision for it would be, that dig deep within our roots, have a global perspective. Not everything Western is horrible. So like, even though we may, the conversation may be perceived as that way, there are a lot of things that the West has done right. And and figure out what are those things which apply to us, and have a thorough fusion which is very respectful to all cultures all over the world.
That's amazing. I mean, it offers a whole new opportunities for us to look at new perspectives and emergence. So I think I would wish to end this conversation by asking you one thing. Any dream project for you? Anything that you would like to perceive as right now, something that you aspirational?
So the thing is that I try not to do that, because to look at a dream project or whatever, because what happened was that growing up as a musician, the Grammys is the biggest award in the world, even though it's an American award. The thing is that it's like the Olympics, because anyone anywhere in the world can win a Grammy. It's not like only Americans can win a Grammy. So anyone anywhere, just through excellence of music, can win that particular award. Now, it was always considered to be something that is beyond anybody's reach, and me sitting down in India, I thought that, I would not even think about it, because it was an unattainable dream. So I would watch it on television or whatever. And during this lifetime, it was not even imaginable that I could win one of those awards. But when I was 33, I won that award. And then I was thinking that what next now, you know? Now that I've won the biggest award possible, and it's a dream that I'd never even imagined that would be even a dream of mine, what to do now? And now I won a second one. So the thing is that, so basically what I've decided to do is that to take my life one step at a time, and everything has to happen organically in my life. You know, because if I try really hard to do something, then basically that is where, you know, depression comes in and failure comes in and all of that stuff. So right now I just want to take things as they come in, and I'm very glad that I'm surrounded by people who are very good people, and I've got a team which is absolutely amazing that works with me, and you know, so I know that, like, you know, things will always get better. And every single year of my life, I'm now going to turn 41, and I can tell you this, that every single year of my life for the last 41 years each year upon year has been better for me.
Right.
Like people say that, oh, I'd like to go back to my childhood, and I had a good childhood, but my present is my best time in my life right now.
Great.
Yeah.
I'd like to end this conversation with a question. So you've been a professor at NIAS.
Correct.
Right. Some of us are teachers here. Any specific message to teachers? How to be better at it?
Actually, I was an honorary professor, so but I used to talk about science communication over there. So the thing is that because all of my music is about the environment and sustainability, and as I told you, social impact. So they used to be the director of that university was a gentleman known as Dr. Baldev Raj. He was the head of the Indira Gandhi Atomic Research Center, and very, very cool guy, very amazing professor, very decorated, person, gentleman, and I hugely admired him. So he had invited me, he had seen a concert of mine, and he invited me to give a talk over there, and then he told me that what you're doing is science communication through music. So he said that why don't you collaborate with our professors. Now the thing is that we were talking a little bit earlier about how do we get people to bring about changes within their own lives, you know? How do we get people to understand and empower themselves to believe that they need to change their behaviors, or even governments, you know? How do we do all of that? Now you can make 1,000 speeches, you can showcase a ton of scientific data, and probably it will make no difference. But the effective medium is communication, and preferably through the arts, because as I said earlier, you have to emotionally connect with people. So that's what Dr. Baldev Raj recognized in me. And then he said that why don't you have talks with our professors, and you know, and we can figure out how to collaborate with scientists so that you get the right narratives to communicate in your concerts. And our professors do not have to bother about communication, they have to bother about what they're good at, you know, of figuring out what issues are and figuring out solutions. And you do the communication part, you know. So that was a great collaboration while he was alive.
Great.
Yeah.
So I think there's so much to learn. On that note, it's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you. Absolute pleasure talking to you.
We are honored to have your presence today, and as we commence this journey from Chanakya University, and this is a specific series of inspirational speaker series to commemorate 75 years of Indian independence. And we are happy that people like you are representing the idea of India across the globe and giving us a lot of aspiration to work towards. Pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.